Good afternoon. I'm Helena Leite. I'm a Strategy Development Officer at Aberdeenshire Council. We would like to thank Nestrans for organizing this event and for this invitation. Today, we will use the integrated travel town approach to talk about community engagement, behavioral change, and scaling at the city region level. In the next few minutes, we'll talk about the context that led to this project. We'll do an overview of the integrated travel towns. We'll go through the project plan and the project delivery, and finally, some lessons learned and opportunities to evolve. When we're talking about behavior changes, we'll be asking three questions. One is, what exactly do we want people to do? The second one is, who are the people we want to adopt a new behavior? And the third one is, why don't they already adopt our proposed behavior? If we can answer these questions, then we can set clear objectives, we can understand our audience and what cues and triggers to use, and we will appreciate the barriers to the change we would like to see. So how do we do that? Firstly, by engaging with people, attending public gatherings, volunteering to speak at local events, hosting community events, explaining our plan, making contacts everywhere, identifying a community champion. Those are the people that are trained to be leaders in their local area. They will be a major source of information for us. We'll also get to know the location, we'll spend time with the community, we'll carry out, of course, our own audits, we'll involve the community in identifying key routes, for example, and then we'll also have to understand the purpose or the reason why these people are traveling. We'll use surveys to identify patterns. We'll try to identify key routes. We will ask if the journeys are habitual or if they are necessary. Then, after collecting all this information about people and the location and their reasons for traveling, we can now start analyzing this information. There's a famous quote from Peter Drucker that says that what can't be measured can't be managed. We are now in the position to start doing some analysis, some data analysis with this information. We can try to find patterns and frequencies. We can try to identify key routes to school, for example. We can understand our audience better by looking at these numbers. So what exactly is the context of the Integrated Travel Town project? Um, we are living in a climate emergency. Scotland was the first country to declare it officially back in April 2019. We know we have all sorts of environmental issues. We also have a lot of health issues, both physical and mental. And there's never been a time where it's so important to talk about active and sustainable travel. We do respond to the guidelines of the transport strategy documents, and they are very clear in their objectives of encouraging people to reduce non-sustainable journeys, increase active travel, make travel more efficient, reduce carbon emissions from transport, and, of course, improve health. If we do a reality check at the national level, we can see that our aspirations were very different than what the reality is. For example, we were hoping that by 2020, around 10% of the commuting trips were made by bicycle, and we know that only 2 or 3% of the commuting trips are made by that mode of transport. We also know that walking accounts only for 12% of our journeys to work, while we expected to have about 30% of that by 2020. So the reality is very different than what we expected. So what exactly is our problem in Aberdeenshire? Usually conversations about active travel are focused on urban situations, on cities. Aberdeenshire is a very vast territory. Just for comparison, the population of Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire is very similar. Um, According to the data I've seen, Aberdeen City would be about 230,000 inhabitants, while Aberdeenshire is 260,000. But in terms of area, Aberdeen City is 185 square kilometers, while Aberdeenshire is 6,300, which is more than 30 times bigger in terms of area. So we have a large urban population, but it's spread across a huge geographical area. Issues with wide and dispersed population across the region, with particular and unique issues from town to town, are difficult to monitor, and our solutions need to be tailor-made to suit the population in that specific town. The integrated travel town approach is looking at 5 towns across Aberdeenshire: Fraserburgh, Huntly, Helen, Inverurie and Portlethen. With the integrated travel town project, we're aiming to improve walking, cycling, access to public transport and sustainable travel, such as electric vehicles, across the 5 towns. With this approach, we will be able to have longer term strategic planning. We'll be drawing together both infrastructure and behavioral change actions. We have a common approach for the 5 towns, and we'll be aiming to underpin a 5-year delivery program. Each of the 5 towns have their own project plan. It started with researching the issues, the barriers, the problems, and understanding the people in that area, as we've mentioned before. Then we could develop a master plan for each town, and we could then start delivering projects while monitoring them. We'll talk about this in a minute. And then we always need to be flexible enough to react and adjust to the plans that we have. We can see here the different phases of the project delivery process. It starts with an infrastructure review and a site audit work. Then, of course, we have all the collaboration with the community in terms of events and public gatherings. We also do a desktop mapping exercise, and then we can draft master plans for approval. As the project implementation starts, we start monitoring the project. We use a very wide range of data, some of them collected by ourselves from, for example, cycle counters, but we also use resources that are available to the public, like the Scottish Household Survey, for example. We are always trying to find out if we are meeting our expectation with the project. If we don't meet our expectations, then we need to be flexible enough to adjust the project so we can achieve our objectives. Since the beginning of the Integrated Travel Town project, Aberdeenshire Council has produced dozens of outputs already. Apart from, of course, the 5 master plan documents, we've organized school and community events. We have produced walking and cycling maps that are available in our website and a paper version in our libraries. We have just developed the new rural e-bike loan project. We are doing the development of new strategic cycle routes. We have TV and radio and online adverts, all sorts of support for schools and communities. Taking some numbers, for example, the cycle to school rates in Aberdeenshire have almost doubled from 2008 to 2019, from 3.7% to 7.4%. We've seen an almost 20% increase in active travel. We can also look at more specific data. Fraserburgh, for example, that increase in cycling to work was almost 10% since 2013. Finally, some lessons learned during this project so far. So we talked about how important it is to set up a monitoring program that will allow proper evaluation of how the project is going and the results we're achieving. That leads us to that point where we say it's important to be flexible. If we're not achieving our results, we will need to adjust our program. And of course, everything that has to be with the community, to understand the community, to try to listen to their suggestions. Probably the most important part is to capture their interest. When people are interested, they will get involved, and that will be a very important help for us to deliver the project. And last but not least, this is what we believe we can achieve. We want that within 10 years, 40% of all local journeys within the integrated travel towns will be by active and sustainable modes. Thank you very much for listening. You have our contact there. Please get in touch if you have any suggestions or if you want to know more about the integrated travel town. Thank you.